Welcome back, everyone, to the third day of our conference on intercultural competence. For those of you whom I haven't had the pleasure to meet yet, my name is Chantel Warner. I'm one of the two co-directors of Circle, together with my colleague Beatrice Dupuis. It's my great pleasure to be able to introduce our plenary speaker for today, Professor Chin-Sook Pak. Chin-Sook Pak is Associate Professor of Spanish in the Modern Languages and Classics Department at Ball State University in Indiana. And this is coincidentally where I first cut my teeth as an academic, as an undergraduate, and we've been exchanging memories there. I was a double major in classics and German studies, but reading about all of the work that Chin-Sook Pak does there, I think I would have been in danger of also majoring in Spanish if I had been born just a little bit later. Her excellence as both a teacher and as an engaged scholar is well documented, well evidenced. She's received awards both for her teaching and for her scholarship. And she's had a long commitment to integrating language, content, and interdisciplinarity in really innovative ways, in particular through service learning and community-based learning. And this is what really attracted us to her work for this particular conference and our theme on mobility, virtual and physical, because I think her work really shows us the ways in which that kind of mobility, that movement can happen even without ever leaving the city that you live within or you're studying within. So her talk with us today will be Stories and Relationships That Awaken Us, Service Community-Based Learning for Intercultural Competence. Please join me in welcoming Chin-Sook Pak.
Buenos días. Well, thank you very much for giving me the privilege to participate in this conference. I would like to begin with some numbers. Interest in service or community-based learning has grown tremendously, especially over the last 20 years. So looking at 2016 survey conducted by Campus Compact, which is a national organization of more than 1,000 colleges and universities to promote the civic engagement goals in higher ed, we can see that out of the 396 institutions that responded to the survey, there were about 34,000 courses in community-based learning with over 20,000 faculty members teaching that. On average, then, per campus, 83 courses were being taught by 51 faculty members. So as these figures reveal, Ehrlich and Full state that community-based learning is becoming a major force in American higher education that intentionally integrates public purposes into curriculum. For those interested in intercultural competence, the basic tenets of the service learning pedagogy that stresses the collaboration between the community and campus and building mutually beneficial relationships to enhance community life have close links to many of the desired attitudes, knowledge, skills of intercultural competence. Indeed, as Van Cleve and Cartwright stress, service learning is fertile ground for intercultural learning. The goal of this presentation, however, is not to examine service learning along specific dimensions of intercultural competence. Instead, I would like to focus on stories and relationships that develop through service learning that takes us to places where intercultural learning can happen. So first, I would like to share my own personal journey. Intercultural competence for me is a lofty endeavor, and I believe for all of us, an ongoing process. Parker Palmer, in his influential book, The Courage to Teach, states that beyond our disciplinary knowledge, our teaching techniques, or even the reasons why we teach, ultimately we teach who we are. At best, my own cultural lenses and experiences offer limited vision. So, service learning has taken me into the messiness of real-life encounters with people in the community with whom I would never have worked together. Next, I would like to share some examples of service learning projects with my former students of Spanish, and finally, present preliminary findings of ongoing case study that examine my former students' perception. After having done service learning for over 18 years, I think it's about time that I find out, did it really matter to the students years afterwards? And also, despite the different types of service projects in different types of courses at different times, I want to know if there are any common themes that emerge as to what they say, as to they retained from service learning. Ultimately, my goal is to present service learning as a useful platform for all of us to ask that deeper question, which I think is the very focus of this conference. How are we interconnected? So let me begin with my initial encounter. Unlike the pioneers of service learning, who began with nobler purposes of higher ed, connecting service to democracy, my initial encounter was simpler. At the time, I was feeling quite discouraged with academia in general, and how little my students seemed to retain, even after 3 weeks of winter break. And also, I noticed from being in the bubble of Ivory Tower, my own disconnect from the outside community. So I needed to try something different. As it happened, I discovered a grant opportunity from Indiana Campus Compact to develop a service learning course. Well, it seemed to make perfect sense with the growing Hispanic presence in the community. Students would get to practice Spanish for real-life situations, and we will get to learn community issues for Spanish speakers in the nation, and especially in my state of Indiana. So when I got the grant, I dived in, despite my very limited understanding of the civic engagement goals behind service learning pedagogy. There are many different types of community-based service learning. For this presentation, I'm going to focus on academic service learning. So you can see the 3 necessary criteria. I first began with the first circle, enhanced academic learning. I wanted to find ways that learning was more meaningful, and so that I can motivate more students to study Spanish. As such, looking back, I'm not too sure that the initial service attempts really served the community well, looking back. After all, developing relationship with community partners and understanding their needs from their perspective takes a long time, and it's an ongoing process. Even today, students and I, we continually ask, what is the meaningful and relevant service to the community, especially given the unique combination of variables such as the particular geographic area where we live and work, the particular community partner and needs, the particular social and political climate of the time, the particular learning objectives of the course, and the particular makeup of the students who enroll in the class. Service learning has been very rewarding, but at the same time quite messy and challenging. It forces us to shift the power structure and give up control, as the space in the classroom has to be bigger for the community to come in. That means leaving margin for unpredictable events. For example, earlier years, my students got into trouble with the police. My 3 students, they were too eager to help change lives. So, beyond the class project, they found someone in the community and decided to help him get driver's license. The only problem was that they did not know he was undocumented. What transpired afterwards shook the students. As you can imagine, when they saw the first-hand encounter of what could be potential consequences for the individual when his papers did not match the social security number in the system at B&B, and the police were called. Unaware of all, I came back home after dinner quite happy, and I discovered those 3 students on my doorsteps holding hands, and they reported, "Profesora, we have a small problem." Well, fortunately, the problem was resolved, and the individual was released from police and ended up returning to work the next day. And we had to discuss in class the parameters of our activities. However, that first encounter for those students and the class brought a special, fresh appeal to those issues that affect the most vulnerable in the community. In fact, one of the 3 students later shared that it completely altered her goals for a college degree, the person whom she would marry, and the career that she would seek. The last I heard of her was that she was pursuing doctorate in public policy. So collaborating with the community requires listening carefully. John Saltmarsh, once from Campus Compact, once lamented that we offer public speaking class, but not public listening class. So it's much easier to jump into action and try to fix others without sitting down to listen and be with others. So my students and I, we have to ask constantly during our reflection sessions, is this meaningful service for the community? And how do we know? Well, my encounters with the community eventually led to the 3rd criteria, purposeful civic learning, which I am still learning. Once I asked a respected community leader how he knew that the work done in the community really served the people. He replied at the end, he asks just one question. Does the work we do further bring people together or divide them? So that question has become the final reflection question that we use in the classroom at the end of this semester. Civic learning prompts me to ask difficult questions of myself and the students. What does it mean to be educated and work with democracy? How is my and your well-being dependent on that of the community? It's a continual learning process. Reciprocity and reflection are at the heart of service learning pedagogy. Reciprocity means beyond giving and receiving. It means working together. And without structured reflection opportunities, we do not necessarily connect service to learning. The critical examination of what transpires in our community and within ourselves. So now I would like to share some examples of service learning projects that my former students have done. First, let me take you to where Ball State University is located. Our most famous alum is David Letterman. It's in the geographic area in the center of Indiana. According to 2016 figures, Indiana had just about 7% Hispanic population. In the county where my university is located, only 2%. For Ball State University with 22,000 students 2 years ago, the university reported under 16% ethnic minorities with just about 4% Hispanic student population. So it is a predominantly white institution, and many students come in with limited exposure to racial and ethnic diversity. In terms of coming up with what service project to do, first it would be listening what community partner wants and needs, followed by how I can match with the specific learning goals of the course. And then if I can get proper resource support depending on the final product. And also discoveries and mistakes from previous service learning, it's always helpful, and time feasibility within the one semester. The service projects include tutoring, which was most common, English conversation skills, or pronunciation clinic, especially if I'm teaching Spanish phonetics, preparation for citizenship exam, GED, computer skills. Sometimes it meant teaching Spanish for staff at nonprofit, like Head Start that provides preschool education support for families of low income. Also, mentoring partnerships with Latino high school students, and as a climax, bring them to our campus and spending the whole day with them. Although the Hispanic enrollment in college has been increasing, still we can see significant gap for the actual attainment of the degrees. For indirect service, we created educational videos for the community. On one occasion, we learned about a 19-year-old man who was arrested for drinking at a park. When he did not have his papers, of course, the consequences became severe. His family did not understand why he was arrested. After all, he was the man of the family working to provide. They did not know the ramifications of public intoxication or underage drinking. So we figured if we could help just one family avoid such life-changing consequences, our efforts could be justified. Well, later on, this video in the format of Mexican soap operas, we had to watch a lot of soap operas to do that, the snippets of the video got aired at Univision Chicago, and about 800 copies were distributed to many organizations and nonprofits around the nation. Another video project giving practical advice to Latino youth for how to prepare for college. Sometimes it meant preparing and designing resource packets for the busy nonprofit organizations. And sometimes just sharing the Latino education experience of college and high school students, and creating a student magazine, which we're in the process of creating. The title is Querer es Poder. If you want, you can do it. And finally, we have done advocacy and community-based research projects where students would collaborate with community leaders, and we would organize forums to discuss about what we see in the community and how we can collaborate. Sometimes the university became the service recipient as we went to see the higher administration and said, we share same goals. We want to help you be in the same team, how to increase the Latino student recruitment and retention. So then they would say, if we had time, we would like to find out this and this and this. So my students conducted research. They came back at the end of the semester. They presented to the higher administration and entire staff of the admissions office. Now I would like to show snippets of videos, one from tutoring, another one mentoring partnerships, and creation of educational videos.
This is Spanish 201, which is a typical third semester college Spanish course. The majority of students in this class do not continue onto upper level classes. So when I'm teaching such class, I struggle between two concerns. If this is their last Spanish class ever, what is it that I hope that they will remember? How does this class experience encourage them, motivate them to further study the language and engage with the speakers of this language? In this class, students will work on a community project. And the goal is to create this face-to-face encounters.
¿Cómo están?
Muy bien, ¿y ustedes?
Muy bien y cansada.
¿Cansada?
Sí.
¿Qué hiciste ayer?
Fui a Indianapolis.
My project was attending the Latino Student Union meetings on campus here.
My project was working with a 24-year-old man, and he was wanting to receive his GED.
I worked with 4 Latino moms at Head Start, which is like a low-income school for kids under kindergarten age.
Students meet with individual community partners, minimum 8 to 10 hours. And after each meeting, they come back to the class and report what happened. Spanish is not the end goal of this class. Spanish is only the means or the channel to connect with people, to explore community, and learn to interact with community partners whose backgrounds are totally different from us.
I've never really been in contact with anyone that speaks Spanish, like outside of like my Spanish teacher in high school. I didn't think I could do it. I was scared.
¿Qué descubrieron?
Descubrí que yo no sé mucho sobre la cultura de los latinos.
From this project, I just learned how unaware I am of like the world around me.
Before, I had like automatically stereotyped them, and now I feel like I can understand their struggles more.
I gained just like self-confidence in speaking with others who I don't really know.
I have a greater ability to speak Spanish now than I did before, and it just inspires me more in the future to utilize that.
I enjoyed meeting Ernestina mostly. You know, I don't get a lot of contact with people outside of the university even.
I started attending the Latino Student Union meetings, and I was having a lot of fun, and then elections came around and they elected me as their secretary of their executive board.
I got to practice Spanish a lot. I gained a new friend.
When students say, I gained a friend, and I see joy in their face, that says something about they have forgotten who are we and who are them. We're all together.
Les recomiendo a los estudiantes de futuro que escuchen a las historias de las personas, porque las personas tienen más a hablar.
Los beneficios son muy grandes porque yo antes no podía hacer una cita con el doctor, ni podía comunicarme nada con ellos. Siempre tenía problemas porque tenía que buscar intérpretes. Y ahorita yo voy sola al doctor, hago citas y pues me siento contenta porque he aprendido mucho de ellos.
The project we've been working in Spanish is basically we're mentors for high school students located in Fort Wayne, and as mentors we kind of just are guiding them towards their next steps in education.
So we Skype with them and we just, at first it was just like learning about each other, and then now we're getting to the part of like helping them with filling out applications, resumes, interview skills, just practicing all that stuff before applying for college. So it's a good way to practice our Spanish writing, speaking, reading skills.
The most enjoyable part is just being a mentor. It's something that I want to do upon graduating and starting my career in construction management.
Well, the goals of our seminar are to learn Spanish by using it in real-life situations, and also to learn the importance of community involvement through our service, and particularly through studying the issues that Hispanic immigrants face.
We have identified common issues that recently arrived Hispanic immigrants face. One of the main services we're providing is writing and producing a series of 4 educational videos similar to Spanish language soap operas.
We hope that our soap operas, our telenovelas, will be an accessible way of sharing important information with newly arrived immigrants. Hopefully by seeing the information in story form, they'll be able to remember it and understand it better than perhaps if somebody were just talking to them and listing off a bunch of facts.
The big picture was to explore our community, to become part of our community, and do that by using and improving and applying our academic skills to enhance civic learning.
Well, the goals of this class is not just to produce a meaningful service through our video project, but equally important is what happens to individual, me as their professor, the students as individuals. What kind of transformations take place within us? Are we really becoming more active and responsible participants and contributors to our society?
This class was definitely not like any other class I've taken at Ball State. It was practical use of our Spanish for a good cause. I don't think there's really a better combination than that.
You could actually see it. There was something there. You had a personal connection, and that's something you can't get from a book.
I'm a Spanish major, and I've never wanted to use my Spanish for anything useful. And I know that sounds bad, but I just didn't. But after working in the Hispanic community a little bit this semester and seeing the problems and seeing the real need there is for people who can speak both English and Spanish to help bridge that communication gap, I want to do something, especially in schools.
If we can encourage, positively support just one person, whether our classmate or a larger community member, I think that's enough. Everything else is bonus.
So now, my ongoing study. Service learning research has revealed many positive outcomes for student learning, for their academic learning and civic learning. However, most studies focus on short term. And so after having done service learning for all these years, I wanted to know if it mattered. So my guiding questions, number one, was what do former students believe was their most valuable college educational experience? If service learning is indeed one of those high-impact educational practices as identified by Cole, then I figured it should pop up naturally. Two, what do they remember? Those positive and negative. Three, what did they gain from their experience that they consider valuable? And lastly, do they recommend? Do they have suggestions? So, survey looked at their profiles, details of their educational experience concerning especially Spanish language and service learning. And also I conducted interviews to get more stories and narratives of some of the survey questions. One major challenge was finding the former students. In some cases, I no longer had a class list. And so I had to dig into other sources. And also, finding their contact information was not easy. I don't like social media, but Facebook saved me. I had to stop after I identified about 120 potential former students, because in some cases, students had changed their last names. And especially with more common last names, there were too many profiles to go through to find them. So time was ticking, and I stopped. 58 responded to the survey, although some omitted those questions that take more time to think. And then out of them, 16 consented to be interviewed. For this presentation, given time restrictions, I'm going to focus more on the survey results. So some of the students took more than one service learning course with me, but they ranged between courses that were taught from 2000 to 2016. The service learning courses that they took ranged from service learning immersion semester with me, advanced composition honors colloque service learning, business Spanish phonetics, advanced grammar, advanced composition, and third semester Spanish course. The type of service learning projects that they said that they participated in was mentoring high school students, research projects, teaching Spanish to English speakers, producing resource for the community, and the greatest number participated in tutoring Hispanic community members. 57% of the respondents majored in Spanish, 29 minor, and 14 stopped after third or fourth semester of Spanish. In terms of racial ethnic makeup, 81% identified themselves as white, although 15% is Hispanic. It can be a little misleading because I taught 2 classes for heritage students with service learning, so that includes 8 of them. When looking at how much Spanish they use after graduation, the initial figures first seems like, 43% have regular or often usage of Spanish. However, when I took out the heritage students, the non-heritage students, only 1/3 indicated that they had regular contact, which means 2/3 had very limited exposure to Spanish after graduation. The first open-ended question that I asked, looking back, what 2 or 3 things come to your mind about your college experience that you consider valuable? So 3 students said it was capstone research with individual professors. 6 indicated it was their special course experience. Another 6, connections made with faculty. 8, participation in student organization, residential life. 11, internship, student teaching, or working as RA. Slightly more, 17 said experiential learning and project-driven learning was very meaningful. Half of the respondents said study abroad. And 36, which is 2/3 of respondents, indicated that service learning or community-based learning was one of the most, if not most significant college educational experience. Now, the figure could be slightly higher given the fact that service learning is a part of experiential learning and project-driven learning. One important aspect is study abroad. Since not all those respondents had the opportunity to participate in all the other educational experience, later survey questions asked, and 31 students indicated that they participated in study abroad, which means 85% of the respondents indicated that study abroad was one of the most important education experience. Now, going back to what they remember, first I asked, what did you enjoy the most about your service learning? Out of the 53 who responded to this question, majority said relationships. connecting with people. 22 said it was real life. It was authentic learning. 20 said it was meaningful, that they felt like they were doing something that mattered. 15, learning about issues. 7, Spanish. 3, given greater autonomy, having impact in careers, and being pushed out of the comfort zone. When asked, what did you enjoy the least? Slightly less responded to this question, but the greatest number was time commitment and scheduling difficulties. 7 indicated they did not like being pushed out to do things that made them very nervous. 5 indicated it wasn't their preferred service project. Some indicated that they had a hard time coping with uncertainty. Also, having the pressure of making formal presentation to the community at the end was very stressful. Few more indicated that it's not easy to work with groups and community partner. And just random responses, after the semester, they wanted to do more, but they did not know how to connect. And one student said it was torture writing weekly reflection journals. Next, when I asked, what were 1 or 3 valuable aspects of your service learning experience, that is, any attitudes, knowledge, or skills or outcomes you gained? So here's one sample response by one student. Knowledge of circumstances surrounding seasonal migrant workers, their families, their values, and their lives. Increased confidence in myself, speaking ability, Spanish. More empathetic and informed stance on immigration, education, and Hispanic people. So I looked at some of the emerging patterns that came up, and the greatest, the most common mention was knowledge. The knowledge of issues affecting the community, which were part of the course content, and the knowledge of the lives of others. 20 also mentioned specifically getting to use Spanish and confidence. Some indicated that they developed other skill sets, such as goal setting, creative communication, teaching skills, and one even said cooking skills. Well, apparently this group of students, I don't know how, they ended up in community partner's house and they shared a lot of meals. And he learned how to cook chile relleno. Okay, so again, connecting with people, real world practical application, working together, team building, developing empathy, developing more interest to be involved in the community, developing openness, that it was empowering experience, and it was the challenge, being forced to try something new was meaningful, developing patience, humility, and having direct impact on their profession and career. I also asked a little more for them to respond, for me to see if they had greater interest in the community. So looking at these figures, about 90% strongly or somewhat agreed that their service learning experience had an impact on increasing their interest in Hispanic communities, stepping out of comfort zones, increasing openness to interact with others, developing desire to listen to others, and learning to communicate with others. Again, about 90% strongly or somewhat agreed that their service learning experience had an impact on more self-awareness of their privilege, evaluating their assumptions of others, reducing stereotypes, understanding perspectives of other cultures, and developing empathy. I asked at the bottom of each group if they could give some examples regarding their selection. And here are some this is one of the first experiences where I really began to understand the experience of ethnic minorities and the difference between mine and their experience. Another, one can have more empathy if one is aware of the challenges people face. The information I learned helped me speak against negative stereotypes, and so forth and so forth. I wanted to also know, have their interest in the greater community increased? So looking at these figures, again, about 90% strongly or somewhat agreed that their service learning experience had an impact on understanding of societal issues, interested in learning societal needs, and interested in promoting social justice. 2/3 responded that service learning had impact on their career directions. So given the time, I'll just read two. Talked about they were focusing on the rights of all human beings. One respondent, if it were not for this course, I may not be on the path I am today. Though this course sparked my interest in helping Latino population, particularly immigrants, migrants, and refugees, overcome the specifically educational challenges. So the respondent went on later on and enrolled in a graduate program. I am pursuing master's degree in international educational development, and I would say that my service learning course had a large influence on my decision to enter this field. Finally, did it have impact on Spanish? Majority said yes, it enhanced their Spanish language abilities, increased confidence, comfort. After having done the project, I don't know how it is now, yeah? And for some, it increased their interest to study further, as one respondent said, that service learning was one of the reasons that went on to 202. Finally, do you recommend service learning in Spanish courses? Why not? 51 responded, and those who responded all said yes. And the themes were similar to the previous responses. A huge reason Ball State was worth it for me. I think this summarizes. It's a great vehicle for students to experience practical applications of language in their lives and their work, develop appreciation of cultural intersectionality, and bring students closer to the very community that their language of study originates from. They also provided useful suggestions, more structuring and training before service. How about make it into 2-semester project? And more resources such as collaborating with the past students, for example. And maybe pre-activities to build community partnerships, etc. Of course, the findings from the study must be examined with many, many limitations. Self-reports, perceptions do not mean reality. And also, there is bias. Why would they take time to respond to this survey? Most likely, those who had more favorable experiences. And I had a whole range of projects in different courses. Sample size is only 58. And of course, data analysis was done by me with my own lens. However, I think useful conclusions can be drawn, and I'll let the respondents speak. It was what they remembered from college, and going back to the initial quote of the presentation, service learning increases awareness of the community around us and the diversity in that we may not otherwise. It makes us become less self-centered and gain a more service-minded focus to our lives. Let me finish with one more story, and it deals with the author C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia and many other books. C.S. Lewis belonged to a close group of friends that included Ronald and Charles, who were also famous writers of his time. When Charles died unexpectedly, C.S. Lewis thought that since Charles was not there, he would have more of Ronald. However, he discovered that he actually had less of Ronald because there were parts of Ronald that only Charles could bring out. Similarly, for me and many students, service learning continues to bring out stories and relationships that we would otherwise not have, and taking us to a place, despite the many imperfections and the messiness of collaborative endeavors, makes us see that we're ultimately interdependent. Thank you.